find me everywhere on my link tree, in my profile. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I am on Threads. I'm on TikTok. I'm on everything. Here on YouTube, I have hundreds of free artist support videos. You'll have to do a little combing to find them, the one that you want, but it might be worth the effort because I talk about anything and everything, and I'm completely transparent about it. I'm a full-time career artist. I've been in the game for decades, done a lot of things, and I'm not a gatekeeper. I don't do the BS thing. I've been through the ups, the downs. I've had to put myself through school and rebuild myself time and time again. I know what it's like to struggle, and I want to help other artists out there, and that's why I do the content that I do. If you do want more personalized attention, yeah, I do that too, but I put a lot of stuff out there for free. Before I get any further, where are you from? And what I want to talk about today is, how do you ship your art? Do you have any tips or suggestions? Also, have you ever had any bad experiences of any work being damaged during shipping? And if so, how did you feel about it? And what did you do? The reason I want to talk about this today, because this was not my planned topic, and I have talked about shipping in the past, but I got a shipment back from a gallery this week, 11 pieces. And when I opened up the box, all 11 pieces were damaged. There were 10 pieces that the frames need to be replaced. And then I had a specialty piece that was on clear acrylic, very, very delicate, paint on the front of it, paint on the back of it. They got scuffed, scratched, things that I can't get out. And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do anything with this. I'm going to have to junk this expensive, valuable, very precious piece. More than the monetary damage, it was the emotional damage of like, God, like my art's like my babies. Like I put my heart, my soul into this. So more than the loss of the financial side of things, it's just adding to a piece of art and trying to remedy the situation. It's going to turn it into something else. So is that an option? Yeah, and it's an option that I'm trying to explore, particularly because that piece is about the story of a phoenix rising from the ashes. But it's going to be a different piece, and ultimately, it would just be good if people handled these situations properly. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the box that I received. I want to talk about some of the things that were wrong with it, some things that can be done, and I also want to talk about some of the other lesser discussed aspects of shipping artwork to maybe help you on your journey. But when I opened up this box, what I noticed right away was that things were loose in there. Anytime you ship artwork, you want it to be very compact. You don't want things moving around. Moving around is just asking for trouble. Anything that can move around, these carriers handle hundreds, if not more, maybe thousands of packages a day. They don't know what's in them, and sometimes the truth is they just don't care. So you always want to err on the side of caution, do everything that you can to protect your artwork. One of my biggest suggestions is, I know that people are like, well, I don't want to spend more money on packaging or packaging supplies. Trust me, it is worth it to spend a little extra time and money on packaging supplies and packaging it, almost overdoing it on the packaging, than to risk the damage, particularly if it's valuable artwork. But you don't want things bouncing around in there. Also, if you are shipping artwork, the typical way to stack artwork, if you're going to have a bunch of pieces, is back to back, front to front. You want to have dividers if you can. A lot of times foam dividers are great, like the really thick foam. It's fantastic. That really gives you a lot of padding so that if things are bouncing around, there's a big cushion there. I'll usually use cardboard and foam. Like I said, overdo it if you can. The other thing is you always want to make sure that the outside of the package, the perimeter, is extra padded so that things aren't hitting the side of that box. And if you have any corners, you want to make sure that those corners are protected, particularly on things like framed pieces. If that hits, it's so easy for that to just chip. And what happened was I had 10 frames that were scuffed, dinged, dented, had divots. And one of the reasons that happened, aside from the loose packaging, was that they were stacked back to front. So the hardware, the sawtooths, the wires of the back of one frame were touching the front of the other. And so every single piece just got nicked to crap. And I'm going to have to replace all those frames. Now, luckily, the pieces were kind of like this. They're from what I call my Beautiful Accidents collection. They're essentially pallets. So the artwork itself, not super delicate. It's pretty sturdy. much more sturdy than my specialty piece and some of my more signature work, but the frames all need to be replaced. The specialty piece, that's another story, but I'm working out the solution on that. So this thing could have been packaged much better. There were a lot of things that were neglected, that were not done, that should have been done. And what's really scary is that this was shipped to me by a gallery, a well-known gallery in a major market that works with very expensive art. And I feel like they should have known better. But I know that stuff happens. And so I reached out to the gallery and I tried to be polite and respectful, even though I was feeling very anxious about the situation. And I said, "Hey, I want to let you know that I got the package. I wanted to ask if you insured it because every single piece was damaged." I took 49 photos showing the damage, but I only sent them a handful. I said, "All the pieces essentially look like this. Every piece is damaged. 10 need to be reframed, and I don't know what I can do with the specialty piece. What can we do about the situation?" So I don't want to burn a bridge if I don't have to. Sometimes people make mistakes, and if you can turn this into a win, that's always going to be an ideal situation. The gallery did not reply the next day, so I followed up with a text message and said, "Hey, I want to let you know I sent you an email about the return shipment. There was some damage to it." And then they replied to the text message and said, "Hey, I've been out of the office, but we'll take a look at that." And I was like, "Okay, we've at least touched base. We'll see what they have to say." And then they called me yesterday and they apologized and said that the person that usually packages the artwork was not there. Now, as a gallery, as a business, I would hope that they would have somebody, even in place of that person, if somebody is out, that would know what they are doing, or at least the very basics of packaging and shipping artwork, because there are some things that are just absolute do's and absolute don'ts. And most of the absolute do's were not followed, and most of the absolute don'ts occurred in this situation. But they did say that they're going to file an insurance claim. We will see what comes of that. I will keep you updated. I'll come on, give a future update on this and let you know. But these things do happen in the art world, and it can be very disheartening. I've seen it happen before and I know about it. So I was at least somewhat braced for a blow like this. But if you have never gone through this experience before, it can absolutely wreck you if your art gets damaged in shipping. Put your heart and soul into the work. Maybe you spend a lot of time finishing it. The piece is done, and then you get it back. It's got this big dent or scuff on it, or something's torn. Sometimes it can make you never want to show your artwork again. And one of the things I actually said was, I don't know if I'm going to keep working with galleries across the country, because I work with, I think, around 8 galleries right now, several across the country. And it's a risk. And I don't know how much the risk is worth for me at this point. I think that I really want to focus more on galleries in the local scene, and I can control and finesse those relationships much better. And if I have other issues, I can just go down to the gallery and handle it. But these are things that happen, and I try to share them transparently and be candid about the ups and the downs and help you avoid some of the pitfalls. I try not to do the gatekeeping thing and just put the info out there so that you can know ahead of time some of the things that really do happen if you decide you want to move forward with your arts in a bigger, grander way. Now, I also want to talk about some of the other aspects of shipping artwork, because I mentioned an insurance claim in this case. But what a lot of artists don't know is that if you're using a carrier like FedEx or UPS or USPS, a lot of times these carriers will not insure the work for full value unless they do the packaging. And even still, they may not insure the work for full value, because the value of a product that's off the shelf that sells regularly is kind of different than artwork, because you as an artist, maybe you've never sold anything before, but you can still say that a painting is, well, I'm going to sell this for $10,000. $10,000 is the price. That doesn't mean that an insurance carrier for one of these shipping carriers is going to honor that. And this is where we get into things like insurance fraud, and it gets very muddy and very complicated. Now, one of the things you can do is you can have your artwork appraised, but that is a very expensive game, and you have to have every piece appraised. And it's something I decided long ago that that just wasn't going to be worth it for me. And I'm somebody that has sold my work for up to $25,000, but still, it's not worth it, the appraisal part of things. So sometimes we do have to take calculated risks, but there are certain things that you can do. to at least minimize your risk. And I think that that's kind of the best thing for you to do. But just know that a lot of times these carriers like UPS, when I shipped this package out myself to the gallery, UPS was not willing to insure the work for the value I was trying to declare it for unless they did the packaging. So something to consider. I'm just reading some of the questions real quick and just see if I missed anything. Okay, cool. So we can continue on. So, yes, you may want to consider having the carrier do the packaging. And the good thing about that is, yes, it costs a little bit of money, but it'll give you a little bit of protection. And because they are used to packaging and shipping things, they know how to package things pretty well. They know how to protect those corners and to do it right. So, yeah, it costs a little money, but maybe that's worth the price of peace of mind for you. Now, if you have an opportunity, one of the best things you can do, and this is what I do a lot, especially with more valuable works, is to use a professional art shipper, somebody that will provide turnkey service. They will pick up the work from me, they will package it, prepare it, they will insure it, they will ship it, they will handle all that stuff. They know how to go through those processes. They are used to handling expensive, high end quality artwork. The downside of that is that the cost on that is going to be higher because it's a more extensive service. But if you're dealing with high end fine art, that might be worth it for you. And if you have the resources, that's probably just the smart way to go because you do risk having your work damaged more so with some of these other carriers that are going to be a little less careful with it, I should say. And it's hard to say which carrier is best because it all depends on who's going to be handling your package that day. And you never know where it's going to get dropped or where it's going to get kicked or what's going on. Or maybe you're in a city or a state or a part of town where there's limited options in terms of who you can use, but these are things that you want to take into consideration when shipping artwork. Dealing with anything local, I always like to just take stuff in person, drop it off myself. Anytime you can do that, that's just a safer road to go. But even with that road, there are some risks that you incur. So that's just the reality of doing business. Now, one thing that is often not discussed that I want to bring up is if you do international shipments. I used to ship a lot of work internationally, not as much recently, and it's because of what I'm about to talk about, duties and tariffs. If you've never shipped work internationally before, a lot of artists don't realize that there are duties and tariffs, taxes on that, and those tax rates are often ridiculously high. Now, a couple years ago, I remember I was shipping stuff to Canada, and even more recently than a couple years ago, but go back a little bit before some of the stuff happened in the world that's been going on. And even at that time, shipping to Canada, say I declared a piece at $1,000, the duties and tariffs were around 40%, meaning that if I shipped somebody a piece for $1,000, customs would hit them with a bill for about $400. That is a surefire way to piss off a collector, to kill your business, and to get some bad reviews and to never hear from that person again, at least not in a positive way. But a lot of artists don't know about this until they have to deal with it or experience it. So again, me sharing these things ahead of time so that you can just be in the know. Now, with everything going on in the world and with the way that US has been doing with international relations, uh, shipping costs are going way, way up, and it's getting much harder to ship internationally. So I've seen the international business go down dramatically, at least for me, which hurts because that was a big part of my business. So that's another way that it's getting tougher and tougher for artists to sustain, and also the cost of these things going up too. So less people are buying, costs and expenses are going up. It's tough time for artists. And so again, that's why I like to do the support. I feel like we could all use a little bit of love and support and encouragement. So I want to show you that it is possible. It is challenging. It's a very challenging time right now, but there's still ways to make it happen. And this is a good segue for me to point out that when I do these live talks, I have a general talking point. And today it was going to be the shipping. But this is your opportunity to ask me anything and everything in real time. I do some artist coaching, and when I do the one-on-one coaching, the personalized coaching, it's typically people pay by the hour. I don't do any extensive coaching programs because I hate the idea of coaching, and that was one of my last talks you can check out. But I do offer some personalized mentoring, But when I do these live talks, this is your opportunity to ask me anything and everything absolutely free. And I'll give you that professional service, that professional answer. No paywall, no gatekeeping, no BS. I will give you the honest, transparent, candid answers that I would give a paying artist because God, I know what it's like to struggle as an artist. As I mentioned, I had to work 3, 4 jobs to put myself through school. I've been through the ups and downs. I've had to pick myself up from the bottom, and I feel like art should be accessible to everybody. So I want to give some of that free guidance. And hey, if I give you a little free guidance or share these things with you, and you want to help me out, even if it's not monetarily, even if you don't want to buy my stuff, you could share my stuff. You could tell people about me, and that would mean a lot. That would help me tremendously. So I'm going to stick around for just another minute or two. Again, if you have any questions, any comments, this is the time. I always tell artists when I lecture on art, if you have an opportunity to ask somebody a question that has the experience, take advantage of that. And the fact that a lot of people aren't asking questions right now means that this is your opportunity to get your question in. So we did get one question. It was, how am I? I'm doing all right. I'm managing. I get to live the dream. I'm hustling, putting in the work, and I'm doing my best to try to help out some artists along the way. So I will take off in a second if we don't have any questions because I don't want to just linger and be on live feeds forever. I want to get back to making the art. That's the most important thing. In fact, I did a post the other day and I said maybe one of the best things we could do as artists is to forget about the metrics and the numbers and just fall in love with the process of creating art again. And that's something that I'm having to remind myself of because it's so easy to get lost in the numbers on these platforms in the performance. So I'm going to keep putting these videos out even if nobody watches them. And I think that's a good time to just say, hey, thank you. I appreciate those of you that do watch my videos, especially those that may have gotten to the end of this video. You can find me on all my platforms, in my profile, on my link tree. Tons of artist support, hundreds of free support videos on a variety of topics. Check those out, and I'll see you next time.